I'm Brett Baer in Washington. Tonight, the American public is getting its first look at a redacted version of the special counsel's report on the probe of Russian interference in the 2016 election. Key lines inside the 400-plus page report. Volume 1, page 1, quote, "The Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systemic fashion." Volume 1, page 2, "The investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities." Volume 2, page 2, quote, "If we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him." But the Attorney General, William Barr, reached a decision on that last point, saying there was no corrupt intent and therefore no obstruction by the president. The president's critics vigorously disagree, and that is the battle ahead. Just a few moments ago, the president tweeted after watching coverage of the report, quote, "I had the right to end the whole witch hunt if I wanted. I could have fired everyone, including Mueller, if I wanted. I chose not to. I had the right to use executive privilege. I didn't." We have Fox team coverage tonight. Kevin Cork's on the White House North Lawn with the president's reaction to that report. We begin with Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge at the Justice Department tonight with details and substance inside this long-awaited document. Good evening, Catherine.
That's right, Brett. Good evening. The special counsel investigation found evidence of potential criminal activity outside their Russia mandate, and today about a dozen prosecutions were redacted. The report also made the case for obstruction against the president, but now the burden falls to Congress.
After nearly 2 years of investigation, thousands of subpoenas, hundreds of warrants, and witness interviews, the special counsel confirmed that the Russian government sponsored efforts to illegally interfere with the 2016 presidential election, but did not find that the Trump campaign or other Americans colluded in those efforts.
The nearly 500-page, lightly redacted report provides the first in-depth look at the nearly 2-year investigation by Special Counsel Robert Mueller into alleged coordination with Moscow, as well as obstruction of justice. The report documents 10 key episodes, painting a vivid picture of the president's response to the collusion allegations. In May 2017, after the president fired FBI Director James Comey, which became the catalyst for the Mueller appointment, there was an Oval Office meeting. Then Attorney General Jeff Sessions delivered the news. Quote, "The president slumped back in his chair and said, 'Oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm effed.'" The report continued, stating the president lashed out. Quote, "Sessions recalled that the president said to him, 'You were supposed to protect me,' or words to that effect. The president returned to the consequences of the appointment and said, 'Everyone tells me if you get one of these independent counsels, it ruins your presidency.'" Before the report was public, Barr appeared to address these episodes.
The president was frustrated and angered by his sincere belief that the investigation was undermining his presidency.
The report states the president asked then White House counsel Don McGahn to remove Mueller, which he refused to do. It also documents an incident where witnesses said the president asked subordinates to draft memos distancing himself from former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and others once they were targeted for investigation. Despite almost daily tweets slamming the investigation,
the president took no act that in fact deprived the special counsel of the documents and witnesses necessary to complete his investigation.
Though the president provided only written answers described as, quote, "inadequate." The Attorney General, along with his deputy Rod Rosenstein, used a special counsel's legal framework to test the evidence, which Barr said ultimately fell short.
The evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
The report did not exonerate the president on obstruction. Quote, "We concluded that Congress has the authority to prohibit a president's corrupt use of his authority in order to protect the integrity of the administration of justice."
It is clear the special counsel's office conducted an incredibly thorough investigation in order to preserve the evidence for future investigators.
While alleged Russian collusion was the predicate for the probe, the special counsel found no connection to the hacked Democratic emails that were so damaging to the Clinton campaign.
The special counsel's report did not find that any person associated with the Trump campaign illegally participated in the dissemination of the materials.
The Attorney General is scheduled to testify publicly to the House and Senate early next month. Also late today, we had top Democrats calling for Special Counsel Robert Mueller to testify as well, Brett.
Catherine Herridge outside the Justice Department. Catherine, thank you. Senior White House aides say President Trump is, quote, pumped about the Mueller report coming out, sticking with his familiar refrain about the investigation. Correspondent Kevin Corke is at the White House tonight with the latest. Good evening, Kevin.
Brett, good evening. By eschewing his right to invoke executive privilege, you could credibly argue that the president effectively opened the door for his critics. But the White House says this is all about history. It will prove that this was a faulty process from the very outset, and ultimately it will also say the president has been vindicated. Not a word. Before leaving the White House late this afternoon for a weekend at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump ignored reporters before boarding Marine One. An uncharacteristic choice, given the news of the day and his fiery brand of political pugilism. Before 9 a.m., he had plenty to say, even before Attorney General William Barr's news conference, beginning his day by proclaiming on Twitter no collusion and no obstruction, including various video montages before adding a rather pithy game over for good measure, a message he took into the East Room later in the morning at a Wounded Warrior event.
They're having a good day. I'm having a good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction. But I say it in front of my friends, this should never happen to another president again. This hoax, this should never happen to another president again.
While the Attorney General confirmed today that there was no evidence of collusion with the Russians by the president or his campaign in 2016, the 448-page special counsel report was far less charitable on the subject of obstruction of justice, as the Mueller team built what appeared to be an extensive case suggesting that possibility, even as the president's surrogates took turns throughout the day defending him.
Nothing was obstructed. They can't point to a single thing that was obstructed in the investigation. I think as a practical matter, in most United States Attorney's Office, they've laughed this kind of thing out of court.
What matters is what the Department of Justice and the Special Counsel concluded here, which is no collusion, no obstruction, and complete exoneration, as the President says. This has been a political proctology exam, and he's emerging with a clean bill of health.
Hardly a clean bill from Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who said on Twitter that the differences are stark between what Attorney General Barr said on obstruction and what Special Counsel Mueller said on obstruction. Fellow congressional Democrats took that assessment a step farther, rebuking the president for his behavior detailed in the report and calling for a thorough review of the report and its findings.
It's certainly not game over in the sense that there's a lot more that we need to know that's redacted in this report.
Frequent critic there, Adam Schiff of California. Brett, as you know, the president has said repeatedly now is the time to investigate the investigators. They say that will be an unflinching look at the genesis of the Mueller probe, Brett.
Kevin Corke live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thanks.